Every day, every hour, terrorists, hackers, rogue nations, insurgents, and enemy operatives plan and carry out devastating acts of terror across the world. Threat levels are high, putting civilians, military forces, and critical infrastructure at risk from both known and emerging enemies. To rapidly identify and defeat these threats, you need a partner with expertise, agility, and a proven record of results. To provide the organizations working to protect our nation with the innovations and information they need to defeat the enemy, you need a partner who understands both your missions and the supporting technologies. To protect your people, data, and critical infrastructure around the world, you need a partner that's ready from day one to deliver innovative solutions to complex problems on time, on budget, and on target. That partner is Envistacom. Experienced in successfully providing the defense and intelligence communities with solutions to global threats, knowledgeable of both the communication and mission-specific technologies needed to support the global war on terrorism, and agile in responding to mission needs. Envistacom helps America's 21st century combatants improve the performance of their networks and mission-critical systems, and use them to identify and defeat emerging threats.
From its founding in 2011, Envistacom is focused on technical excellence and listening to our customers so we can help them solve their problem. Our mission at Envistacom is to help our customers in the aerospace, defense, and intelligence communities respond to current and emerging threats by delivering innovative solutions to their problems using our expertise and technology.
Envistacom, a trusted partner for mission success.
This is GMCTV, Richard Cusley, and I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland at AFCEA, and this is a very extremely important cyber conference for DISA as part of the Department of Defense. And we have a great company called Envistacom, and it's a defense contractor, and they provide cyber security and critical infrastructure support to the United States Department of Defense. So we're really excited to meet Preston Collins, and he's Director of Network Services at Envistacom. He's a network technical professional who has had a very remarkable career in the area of architecture, installation, implementation, integration, security, and administration in local and remote environments. So we're very pleased. And the company itself deploys mission-critical IT networks for DISA, Global's Operation Command Facility, and is really highly prized by the company, by DISA. It's a government organization. Maybe it's not really a company, if you will. Today we will follow kind of a commentary form. It's a little bit different for us, and we'll be focusing on a case study that Preston will focus on in the deployment of mission-critical IT networks for DISA, their Global Operation Command Facility. And the topic is Passive Optical LAN, or POL, the newest and latest and greatest based on GPON technology, DISA Global Operations Command. So, but before we begin, I always like to talk a little bit about the person I'm interviewing.
Sure.
And so, what really inspired you, Preston, to become a technical expert in communications? I know if we look at the ISO model, you're kind of focused on level 1, level 2. And when we talk a little bit about that.
Well, actually, the thing that kind of drove me, I've always been interested in computers and technology in general, but the benefit really came, I guess, when I first started in the Marine Corps. My first job, in the fleet was being a help desk technician.
Wow.
So went straight to the help desk, and there you're dealing with all kinds of user problems, right? Which really focuses on anywhere between layer 1 and layer 7 of the OSI model. So what I ended up doing was I figured out rather quickly, if you don't understand layer 1, you'll never resolve layer 2 issues, and then they kind of compound on top of that.
That's true.
So if you don't understand layer 1 and 2, you'll never get to routing at layer 3 or some of the more complex stuff, in the higher layers of the OSI model. So I really started to focus on really the first bottom 4 layers, you know, and understanding everything that came to be with those first 4 layers. And then out of that, not only comes understanding layer 1 and layer 2, but also seeing the innovation that comes around with layer 1 and layer 2.
Right.
You know, GPON being, you know, the next big innovative thing that we've seen in that arena.
What does GPON mean for those who don't know what GPON means? GPON.
It is gigabit passive optical networking, and really it's networking at the speed of light. Everybody's used to having your regular copper cables that everybody runs to the desk and they run back to a switch somewhere, and that's just kind of how things operate. This is far more efficient in the infrastructure side. It can reduce cost savings, you know, in half, because all of the reduced footprint that you have to roll out an infrastructure. So it's really a huge benefit. And then on top of that, deployment, management, and everything else that comes with having a GPON infrastructure, just it eats its weight in gold.
Okay, so maybe what we can do is we can kind of, you know, let's say that you're the professor here, okay?
Sure.
And I'm the student. I'm in the class, and I've never heard about you know, fiber optical GPON and technology. I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about DISA command and control facility. And maybe you can kind of tell us about your company and the technology, and primarily why DISA selected your company to provide this type of capability.
So we've had a relationship with DISA for a while. We've been following, you know, DISA and the things that DISA is doing to be innovative. And a lot of what DISA is doing is trying to be innovative in today's society, right? They're trying to find the next big new thing that will help push them to that bleeding edge, supporting the warfighter. So one of the big things that we came and approached them with was GPON. So they're building out a brand new facility. This is a huge facility on Scott Air Force Base to house their, at the time, was the DISA CONUS, right? So it was all of the continental US based DISA everything, command and control, the monitoring stations, everything and anything that DISA did that was DISA CONUS was out of this facility. After we built the facility, and we implemented all the new fiber that ran through the MILCON instead of running copper and the traditional networking style, right? They started to see how much more capability they had. Almost immediately after they saw this additional capability, they renamed themselves to DISA Global, because then they were identified as a site that could actually handle the entire globe. They weren't just going to focus on continental US. So DISA started to try and move toward this model where anywhere in the globe can be managed by a single facility instead of having to rely on DISA PAC, DISA EUR, DISA CONUS, you know, all the other DISA commands, so they can all be housed from a single DISA entity.
So is there, just out of curiosity, I'm kind of wondering if a satellite plays into this as far as this network goes on a global basis, or is it just strictly, you know, fiber all the way through to the various headends? So
GPON is pretty much just fiber. They're not going to really focus on SATCOM. Its core is the fiber infrastructure.
Okay, is there anything else besides that? I mean, so let's kind of, you know, this is like kind of a case study. So we're all kind of looking at how your company approached the problem. They must have had a problem first, and then how you know, provided a solution, you know, on a kind of a case study basis.
So what Envistacom was able to do was, DISA has multiple sub-networks within each classification level. So they may have 5 networks that are all unclassified, but they're all completely independent of each other. None of them actually talk to each other. But because of that, because they had so many disparate networks on one classification level, we were able to use a single transmission medium to be able to support that infrastructure without adding any additional infrastructure pieces.
Okay, that's a big one.
So at somebody's desk, they could have a single piece of fiber that runs to their desk. And we're talking single strand, not even duplex.
Okay.
So a single strand of fiber, and it could support 5, 6, 10 different networks. So there's an ONT that will be at somebody's desk that you'll plug that fiber into.
Right.
And then there can be anywhere between 2 and 24 ports of access.
Wow. So this gives a lot of capability. I mean, so if you're just looking at DISA, so they're able to, based on that, they're able to expand, if you will, I'll use the word virtually. Is that a good word to use?
Absolutely.
Kind of virtual. So as the situation changes, they can kind of change as the dynamics are changing on a global basis.
So across the globe, DISA's been moving toward their black core or gray network or MPLS. It's got a bunch of different names, but it's the ability to put multiple different networks across a single transmission medium. And that's primarily for your backhaul infrastructure, these major links that, you know, in between continents or commands or anything else. GPON gives them the ability to extend that same infrastructure to the desk.
Okay.
That's the huge benefit add.
Because the person at the desk then, say if it's an analyst, they have really more power because they're looking at the various inputs, the big data, the sensors, everything that's coming in is on this fiber. They get the type of broadband that they need to really start making kind of analytical projection on where that particular fact is occurring. Is that a good way to look at it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So DISA has multiple different networks that support multiple different functions.
Okay.
You know, some of the stuff that they're doing could be your standard NIPRNet, which, you know, is just the generic, you know, internet for the DoD. But inside that same unclassified network, there may be a need for streaming video feeds that they don't want on the NIPR side. There could also be a need for commercial internet access, you know, to somebody's desk. And with a simple phone call, an analyst can submit a ticket, ask for one of the ports at their desk to be transitioned from standard NIPR to commercial, and then they've got a live commercial internet jack right there at their desk with a phone call.
Yeah. Is this very interesting? Is that a very long process that they have to get approval before that occurs? Is that part of the process as well?
So what will end up occurring is once that network has been deemed acceptable for the GPON deployment, there's typically, you know, he may have a special laptop that he can connect to the commercial side versus the NIPR side. But either way, he's got access to it from his desk.
Okay. So he might have really two different types of devices. If you
Absolutely.
will. And so, you know, we're going to kind of dwell a little bit on, you know, cybersecurity because you know, you probably know of the fact that somebody, they caught 3 divers who were cutting the fiber cable from Egypt to Europe. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yep.
And there was another occurrence where somebody was working to also take up that underground fiber cable and cut it.
Yep.
I think there's 2 incidents. I remember the one Egypt. So what happens when that happens? Anything?
So there's some different technologies built around GPON to make them more secure as well. Right, so let's say you've got a highly secured network, right? Something at the TS level, right?
Okay.
Or it could be NIPR, you know, it all depends on the requirements. But let's say you've got this fiber that you've got to run in between buildings.
Okay.
So obviously it's going to at some point exit one cleared facility, you know, go into the public domain and go into another.
Right.
So without needing to add another type 1 or other alternate means encryption device, they have what's called SPON, which is their secure PON solution.
Okay.
So there's some benefits to this. So this cable is smart enough to know how to react to outside influences.
Okay.
So let's say you run into a scenario where it's run through a manhole cover.
Okay.
Somebody comes by, opens the manhole cover, goes down and grabs the fiber.
Sure.
If they squeeze the fiber, it'll send an alarm.
Okay.
If they bend the fiber, it sets off an alarm.
Okay.
If they cut the shielding on the top of the fiber, it sets off an alarm.
Okay.
So not only does it set off an alarm, it'll trigger the OLT back at the core to terminate the connection going to those that down that fiber.
Wow.
And it alarmed to the point till it'll say, you know, at 236 feet,
Right.
you know, there was an intrusion detection.
Wow.
So you can go in and manually clear the alarm, or go inspect the fiber, figure out what happened,
Wow.
and then go from there.
Well, you know, that's really encouraging because, you know, we're here at the cyber conference, and security is so important. I've never heard that before.
Absolutely.
So is that built into the fiber signal itself? If it varies, if you squeeze, or how does that? Can you?
It's a couple different things, right? It's a specialized fiber, right,
Okay.
that runs in between these facilities, right?
Okay.
It's got some metal lines that run in it that are act as contact points,
Okay.
as well as surrounded by a gel coating, which
Okay.
detects density and a lot of other
Okay, got
things.
it.
But for the most part, it's a pretty awesome technology
Okay.
that gives the ability to run secure communications in areas that you wouldn't typically be able to monitor.
Well, you know, that's really fascinating because, first of all, I never really knew that or even thought about that. That's, is there any other aspect of the command and control? When they say command and, let's talk about DISA's command and, when they say command and control, they're, you know, controlling what data that's going around on a global basis, but leading to the actionable things like for the warfighter, for the. Can you talk a little bit about Can you talk a little bit about what is the function of that command and control facility? Because it's different
Sure.
than the internet data centers.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
nothing like an internet data center.
Okay.
So, DISA's command and control facility is really focusing on providing services to the analyst and the people at the desk
Okay.
to make those command and control functions. They can analyze what's happening to the network, be able to adjust, and
Okay.
be able to influence change. Whereas an internet data center is just managing circuits that run from point A to point B.
Right.
You know, DISA's command and control does so much more than
Okay.
just a circuit facility, which, you know, would be like an IDC.
Right. And so, how large is this command? I mean, is there a lot of people there? I mean, we've seen in Utah the NSA facilities there. I mean, how do you? I mean, is it huge?
It is a giant facility.
Okay.
So, in fact, it's almost double the size the facility that DISA CONUS was in.
Okay.
Right? So whenever they built this new building,
Right.
they added a ton more space. It houses now over 1,000 people.
Okay.
Right, which is an insane amount of analysts and
Right.
people influencing change
Right.
and, you know, trying to be able to manage that. Colonel Kraft really has his work cut out for him there.
Now, who's Colonel Kraft?
Colonel
He's in
Kraft,
charge?
he is in charge of the DISA Global Command and Control facility.
Wow.
So he has got some big shoes there.
Wow. You know, I think they mentioned at the luncheon today about coalition forces. So do they also have access to this
So
capability? I mean, the technology, we're talking about GPON and what you folks are doing.
So yeah, absolutely. So again, all of the circuits and networks that DISA manages, they have access to in this facility.
Okay.
So, you know, we can't really get into the specifics of
No, of course
the
not.
networks,
No, we don't
but they do have access to any network that DISA provides access to in the field.
Yeah.
They have access to there to make sure that they can monitor, manage, and change.
Well, you know, I could see that I'm dealing with somebody who's not only a technical person, but also a visionary person. So I'm going to ask this question. It wasn't in my guidelines here, I know. But, so what is the future in the sense of your technology and how you're applying it to DISA's requirements for the command and control system? Where is that going? You might want to talk a little bit about your company structure and you know, a little bit more understanding about where your company is vis-a-vis DISA and how you're working together and where's it all going, the technology and.
So DISA Global was really the first large pilot of GPON within a DoD infrastructure that was something of that scale.
Yeah, what year was that?
That was just last year, actually.
Last year?
It really
My
was
gosh.
very recent.
Wow. I thought it was, further back, but that's amazing.
No, we finished it up in, I think it ended in September of 2016.
Okay.
So yeah, it was about a 1-year project with about 8 months of installation.
Oh. So was this the first contract your company had with DISA?
No, it was not the first contract we had with DISA. We'd done some other smaller items with DISA, but this was definitely one of the largest that we'd ever done.
I think most people are very curious, especially when we look at the DoD and vis-a-vis technology and the private industry and working together. So let's kind of look at that a little bit. Was it very difficult for you to get this contract? That's a big thing, because a lot of companies want to work with the government, but I've heard it is difficult.
It is difficult, right? You really have to prove that not only are you innovative, but that your solution is viable. And that seemed to be one of the largest hurdles. So when DISA CONUS was still in their old facility, we actually talked with Colonel Kraft and some of the other leadership there, and they finally gave us authorization to do a pilot. It was just a mini demo. We added a small ONT and an OLT and a couple lines and let them try it.
Right.
No cost. Just let us come put it in your facility.
Right.
If you like it, then come talk to us.
Sure.
And we showed them all the benefits, business-wise, reducing total cost of ownership, showing them a return on investment, how it assists the warfighter, makes them more versatile. Because DISA's whole thing is being agile.
Right. Sure.
They really want to be agile in today's networking. So we used their own words against them. We went and talked with them, and they finally let us put it in as a trial. We gave them some training, gave them the tools, and said, no pressure, just let us know. We sat down with them, and they ended up loving it.
So, in other words, your company had to invest.
Absolutely.
The government didn't give you money, say, like, for example, if you're doing a consulting thing, say you did some consulting before, is that they said, okay, you pay me $10,000 and I'm going to go out and consult on this particular project. Here, you have to prove yourself.
Absolutely.
And you take a big risk, correct?
There is a risk.
There is a risk here.
Yeah, there's a lot of business development dollars and infrastructure costs and everything that we took into getting that contract.
Right.
But in the end, not only did DISA love the end result, DISA is now one of our biggest advocates.
Oh.
So Envistacom has always been a huge word of mouth company. So now that I've got DISA going out there, telling these new Milcom projects that are popping up, we're going to build a new facility for this function or that function. We've got our own advocates going, hey, you might want to look at GPON. And then most of the time, the initial reaction is hesitancy. Nobody wants to transition to the next new thing.
Yeah, that's a very difficult thing, isn't it?
It really is, and people are nervous about it. They don't want to make that leap.
Sure.
And then find out that there's nothing beneath them.
Yeah, that's true.
So, after most of the time, after they take a tour of the DISA Global facility, and they talk with some of the engineers and the local people who are using it, and they start to turn around.
Yeah, great. This is really good news because, I had a chance, I was your advocate, by the way, during lunch.
Thanks.
And I personally think it's a great technology, and it's so new. I mean, your company, maybe you can tell a little bit more about your company, the size and, when it was started. Can you share that?
Sure. So we're about 200 strong now, so we're still relatively small.
Well, it's a good size, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
We've got a lot of people on contracts. We're providing services in 9 different countries across the globe.
9 countries.
So, but we're growing hand over fist every year. Our revenue lines have doubled almost every year since we've started.
Wow.
So we've really been focused on growth. That's really, if Envistacom is focused on anything, internally to the company, it's innovation and growth.
Yeah, and what's great about this story is that number one is here's an example where the government really is helping a small business
Absolutely.
To get started. Normally it's the other, it's very, very difficult to work with the government. And here's a very good example of a company that has demonstrated that if they have the right technology and the right innovation, it solves the right type of problem, has a good, as you mentioned, cost of ownership, a good ROI, the government will make a decision. And that to me is illuminating.
Absolutely, and Envistacom has never had 8A status. So I mean, we did it without a lot of the benefits to some of these other companies that they do have. Some of the small business incentives. We are a woman-owned small business, and Elisa Carson is a great president. She leads from the front.
Is she from? She's also a technologist.
She likes to closet say she's not, but
she is.
But she very much so is. She knows quite a bit more than what she'll let on to.
I see. I'm wondering if you have any other comments, because I think what you laid out here is a very good success story, a good case story of a technology. Technology is nothing unless it solves a problem. In this case, it solves the type of requirement that DISA needs to support the warfighter. That's really the message here. So.
Absolutely. I mean, and the benefit is it can support not just DISA's facility, but the DoD as a whole. So I mean, the more and more this starts to catch on and become the standard, the lower the total cost of ownership becomes, the less manpower it takes to manage it, and then we can really focus on the warfighter. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? Is to be able to give the warfighter as much support or more than what they're getting currently at a reduced cost or effort to the DoD.
Well, this is a really great end of an interesting commentary. If you have any other questions or any other thing you want to add,
I think I'm good. I think.
Okay, good.
I hope you've got enough to take forward.
Good. Well, Preston, thank you so much. It's been quite enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you.